Good morning. The countries of South America are forming strong bonds with China, and for some obvious reasons. But what is less obvious is why American companies are leaving, just as South American countries are poised to boom economically. That's what's baffling, and it suggests that there are deep problems in American companies, in the United States, in the management, in the vision, and the culture of U.S. firms. And these problems also run deep in Western Europe and countries where South America has deep historical ties. First, the obvious, which is why South America is so attractive to Chinese companies and should be to ours. South America is a giant market, 600 million people. It's rich in natural resources and has a rising middle class, which will make it increasingly valuable for merchandisers. South America's raw materials feed China's industrial and factory sectors, and South American households and families can buy high-quality products from China in return. China has huge investments now in South America. According to aid data and the Wall Street Journal, it's nearly $300 billion. The map here illustrates the economic realities and how these Chinese investments are paying off. China is now the largest trading partner for most countries in South America, up from 0 20 years ago. South America does claim to want a better relationship to the United States, but nobody in Washington feels that South America is a major concern. Chinese diplomats and business executives are much more active and engaged in South America, and now this map is red. And this is perplexing to Western experts who know South America and don't get why nobody up north is paying any attention. This region has everything you would think American companies would want. Giant natural resource economies, including the most important ones, lots of people, a growing middle class, and rule of law. But American officials and policy are directed primarily at immigration and drug trafficking, and ignore the fact that the region is stable politically and growing economically. The per capita GDP in South America is again rising sharply, up 60% since 2020, just 4 years ago. Let's consider that chart, which tracks the rise in per capita GDP from the perspective of someone living in Brazil or in Chile. After years of stagnation, GDP growth is now strongly positive. It's not because of stronger ties with the United States or Europe, because our own officials admit that isn't happening. What has been happening instead is massive investments by Chinese companies and a complete rebuild of logistics in South America. This shows the signatories to China's Belt and Road Initiative, and this one tracks China's investment by size. Brazil and Argentina have each received over $50 billion in Chinese direct investment. Chile's on the board for more than $10 billion, and Ecuador and Peru have gotten more than that. In contrast, compare those numbers to investments in South America from the United States. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation boasted of a $30 million project for mining in Brazil, intended to support lithium battery production, batteries for electric vehicles. But BYD, a Chinese company, put an entire EV factory there. Huawei went in for a 5G city. China has invested hundreds of millions upgrading just one port at Santos in Brazil. So to Brazil households and South American households, they are seeing improvements in their own economies, increases in household incomes at the same time that China's investment and involvement there is up and ours is down. Here is an example from Guyana, who wanted investment to expand a port to unload oil, but Guyana is ineligible to receive U.S. support for the project because of its oil reserves. Guyana's oil reserves make it a wealthy country, so they are ineligible for U.S. government-subsidized foreign direct investment. So that begs a question, which is, where is Wall Street? Our officials ran the numbers and realized that as soon as the port gets built, Guyana is going to be able to access their own oil reserves, and whoever owns that logistics hub is going to make a lot of money. This is literally the reason private equity exists. That's what it's for. Guyana needs some holes dug in the water and some new docks, and whoever helps them do that is going to be paid a lot of money by Exxon forever. And nobody in the United States wants the job. No investors can be found there to improve the port and get paid every time a ship needs to be loaded. China says no problem. If the U.S. doesn't want to help you get your oil, they'll do it. Chinese contractors went in instead. American companies do all the pumping of the oil, and Chinese companies get paid to move it around. Here is another example from Panama, who needed another bridge over the Panama Canal. The U.S. ambassador to Panama wanted an American company to do the work on the project, and nobody would even answer the phone. He calls up Bechtel, a big American contractor. They didn't want to bother, so the contract, totaling $1.4 billion, goes to Chinese companies instead. Imagine a construction company anywhere, and a U.S. ambassador calls up and says, hey, would you like to do a job for $1 billion working in a friendly country? And nobody even calls the guy back. The United States built the Panama Canal. We sent engineers down, and we carved a river that connected the Atlantic and the Pacific, and we cut the world in half. It was a giant engineering project, one of the miracles of the ages. No more going around. Now, 100 years later, the ambassador to Panama is reduced to cold calling engineering companies, asking them if they want $1 billion to build a bridge over this canal. And they just hung up on the guy. If that sounds lazy and stupid to me, how do you think it sounds to the Panamanians? The 20th century was the American century. The 21st will not be. This is Gao Bay Island in Putian, Fujian province. Be good.
The truth and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Everyone who hears these words of Jesus and acts on them is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and yet the house did not fall, for it was founded on a rock. Our Father,